Well, a lot can change in the sports world very, very quickly, and no one knows that better right now than fans, players, and coaches of the Utah State Aggies because they no longer have what they presume to be their head coach going into the 2024 season. Blake Anderson, for various different reasons, is now no longer with this program. A guy that came into this program in January to step in as the defensive coordinator in Nate Dreeling now has to take over as the interim head coach. There are a ton of other changes with this program on the roster, but can Utah State overcome all of that, be able to make it to a bowl game, and be a solid team in the Mountain West here in 2024? Well, you're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you back to prediction season. We have under 30 of these left. I believe this is video number 105. Please continue to show your support for the channel by subscribing, ringing the bell, especially if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am. You're going to want to have to hear what I'm going to say during the season as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. Help support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. Continue to support the channel really just by interacting with it in any way you can, whether that's subscribing, as I said earlier, going back and liking, commenting, sharing, going back and watching my other videos. I mean, do anything else you can. Help support the channel. It does mean a lot to me. The intro was kind of all over the place, so I apologize. But let's go ahead and dive on in to the Utah State Aggies here in 2024. Hey, how do we do predictions this season? Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the Aggie football schedule and give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. Again, no more Blake Anderson for this program. It is Nate Dreeling that takes over. Couple more things I do want to talk to you about first, though, because right over here will be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And, of course, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. This is an offense that was pretty darn good for the Aggies last season, but it's going to be drastically different here in 2024 because it loses a lot of very key contributors off of last year's team. And most notably, you see that in the quarterback position. The top three quarterbacks, the quarterbacks last season that had at least 2 pass attempts, because there were a couple guys, and especially in the wide receiver room, that ended up throwing a pass last season. But all 3 of the quarterbacks you see here on that left-hand side of your screen all threw at least, I'll say, 60 passes. So we'll up that number there for you for the Aggies last season. And the lead one amongst those was Cooper Legas. He had 1,815 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions last season. Put up a pretty good stat line for himself. McKay Hillstead is also gone, 1,062 yards with 11 touchdowns and 8 picks. And then Levi Williams has decided to forego his remaining season of eligibility to enter Navy SEAL training. But I do think he's already graduated from the university, so in a way he's graduated, and that's what I have listed him as here. But now you know the reason. He's off to Navy SEAL training, which good for Levi Williams. He had 425 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and we thank him for his service. But again, Legas Hillstead gone through the portal. So this is the quarterback room that looks pretty darn different. Now, you do get Zeke Payne coming back. Didn't throw a pass for you last year. So there was a lot of unknown in this quarterback room based off of what you had without any additions from the portal. They went and got some additions from the portal. The last time Spencer Petras threw a collegiate pass was for the Iowa Hawkeyes in 2022. You go back to what he did throughout his collegiate career, and, well, the stats kind of speak for themselves, and he famously had a super low QBR. He just overall was not that great. Now, I expect him to put up better stats here with the Utah State team. I just think it was a bad offensive system at Iowa, and I don't think a lot of quarterbacks were going to be able to succeed. But with that being said, I think Spencer Petras in ways is not a bad quarterback, but he definitely is going to need to up his play here if he is to be that starter for the Aggies. But you're also looking at another guy, a Utah transfer by the name of Bryson Barnes. Last season, 1,572 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, which again was not a great stat line. He was definitely no Cam Rising for the Utes last season. So you're going to need improved quarterback play, whether that's from Petras, whether that's from Barnes, or if you decide to go with the unknown there in Zeke Payne, you're definitely going to be looking at a lot of unknown in this quarterback room. And yes, you maybe know what Petras are and know what Barnes are, but how do they play here in 2024? That is the big thing. No matter who it is, you have to see increased production and improvement based on what those two guys have done in seasons prior. If I were to pick now, probably go with the guy on the thumbnail there in Spencer Petras. I'd probably pick him to be that starting quarterback. He's listed first on the R-Lads depth chart, but I don't know. To me, it's pretty close. If it was me personally, I'd go with Bryson Barnes, but I do think they will roll with Spencer Petras here in 2024. Well, let's dive through the skill position room real quick. We'll tell you everything they lose out of the running back, wide receiver, and tight end room. No notable losses out of the tight end room, so great. Let's just move right on to the running back room, where well, you do lose a couple solid players from last season. Devon Booth was your leading rusher at 805 yards, 6 touchdowns on only 120 carries. That's 6.7 yards per carry for all you math nerds out there. And Jaden Bailey is gone as well. Didn't have a carry last season, but is a notable loss in that running back room to me nonetheless. And out of the wide receiver room, you do lose your second leading receiver, but ultimately, probably you could consider your most talented wide receiver from last season. He did lead the team in catches. It is Terrell Vaughn. 89 catches for 933 yards and posted 11 touchdowns last season. I'll tell you right now, though, that was not the team high. Let's tell you what they do have in the running back room coming back, as Rachel Faison will be back here in this room. And apologies if I'm saying that name wrong, but he was the second leading rusher on the team last year in 118 carries, so kind of split carries with Booth last year. 736 yards and 5 touchdowns for him. Robert Briggs Jr. also does come back, and Corbin Cottle will return here as well. So there's your 1, 2, 3, and a really solid 1, 2 in that running back room. Jonathan Baird is a transfer coming in, and Samuel Gamino is a freshman coming in. Both those guys could see some pretty big roles there on, or I should say, in the running back room here in 2024. Wide receiver room. Yes, you lose Terrell Vaughn, and that's a huge loss, but a big get back is the likes of Jalen Royals. 1,080 yards, 15 touchdowns on 71 catches. That's 15.2 yards per reception last year. And look, if you get solid quarterback play out of any of those guys, he's going to have another 1,000-yard season, and he may get there regardless of how the quarterback situation figures out for the Aggies this season. You also do get Micah Davis, Colby Bowman, and Kyrese White all back, while you also get Jack Hestera over from the transfer portal, and you could put a couple other names in that wide receiver list there as well. But I got to tell you what they return at tight end as well. Brock Lane is back, 208 yards and 21 catches and a touchdown last season, leading tight ends for the Aggies last year. Josh Sturzer and Will Money, however you say that last name again, I apologize, but all those tight ends had at least one pass catch. Yes, Lane led the way, but Sturzer and Money each had at least one catch last season. Off the offensive line, gone. Ralph Frias, Calvin Knapp, and Wade Meacham all had solid playing time on the offensive line. All were pretty good in their own ways, and all have graduated. So you do return. I apologize for mispronunciations here. Cole Motes, Wyatt Bowles, Tavu Motu Apuaka, Teague Anderson, Fale Pule Alo, and Aloha Lei Maui. And I apologize for any mispronunciations. I probably butchered at least two of those names, but we'll move on and tell you what they got from the transfer portal as well to help cushion the blow of some of those guys graduating. Trey Anderson and George Melee are both coming in through the portal. It's hard to me to not see this offense overall take a step back, because I got to be honest with all you Aggie fans, I just don't love this quarterback room. Looking at what Spencer Petras and Bryson Barnes have done in seasons prior, I mean, look, maybe they blow me away and shock me and they improve drastically and they have some pretty darn solid seasons, whether that's one of them, the other, or both of them this season for the Aggies. And I think it's hard to imagine both of them not playing and not getting at least one start for the Aggies this season. I do think they'll go with Petras out of the gate in game one. But again, this is an offense that, look, you got a lot of good skill position players, but quarterback play, I think, could definitely drag this offensive unit down here in 2024 if it does not improve. And if those two guys in Petras and Barnes do not improve from where we have seen them in seasons prior. We'll move on to the defensive side of the ball for the Aggies, and Nate Dreeling was originally coming in to try to fix this defense that was not very good last season, and especially was not good in the run defensive unit. They allowed over 210 rushing yards per game last year. The third down defense was not there. They gave up almost 35 points per game. Now Nate Dreeling is going to have to command a football team and try to fix this defense as well. Now he'll have help. There's a lot of new defensive coaches that come into the system, and you do lose a lot of talent off of last year. Or I should say, however, you do lose a lot of talent off of last year's team, most notably, though, on the defensive line, because a ton of guys have left through the transfer portal, and Paul Fitzgerald is one of them. 46 tackles, led the team with 8 sacks last season. You throw a pass defended in there as well. He was one of, if not your most impactful defensive lineman last year, and he'll be playing for a different program in 2024. Sir Mel's, Clifton Mosley Jr., and Pooh Kessie Vakauta, and I probably butchered that name as well, but all those guys are gone through the portal as well. You also do lose a guy due to graduation, and that is Hale Motu Apuaka. He is gone due to graduation. He had 33 tackles and 3 sacks, second leading tackler among defensive linemen last season. Okay, so who comes back to this defensive line room? Well, you do get Sion Sloan back. He did have 28 tackles, 2 sacks off the edge last season. Blaine Spires also off the edge, second on the team with 5 sacks, so you get some nice production returning there. Seni Tui Aki and Anoka Miguel, and I probably, again, butchered those names as well, but all of those guys will be coming back to the defensive line, but depth was a big question mark, so you add a ton of pieces from the transfer portal. Maceo Williams is a transfer, I believe, coming over from Kent State. I'll fact check that right now, but nonetheless, yes, it is the Kent State Golden Flashes where he comes from, where he was a very good defensive player for a Golden Flashes team that wasn't that great last season, but Maceo Williams had a really good season. He should see starting minutes on the defensive line. Marlon Dean is coming in, Miguel Jackson, Ricky Lolohia, as well as some other transfers that you could list will play big minutes for the Aggies defensive front here in 2024. Linebacker room, MJ Tafisi, your leading tackler from last season. No more from him. He is gone. 142 tackles. Didn't post a sack, but was very impactful on the defensive end. Anytime you have a triple-digit tackler, you know they're going to be one of your better defensive players. He had a pass defended last season as well. You also do lose another guy out of the linebacker room. 18 tackles, 1 sack, 1 pass defended from Gavin Barthiel last season. Out of the I should tell you what's coming back in the linebacker room first. Logan Peely is coming back, and that's a big get back. 31 tackles and a sack for him last year. Cole Joyce, Bronson Olevo Jr., and Max Alford all will be returning to this linebacker room, while you do get Jadon Pearson, who is coming in through the transfer portal. I'll try to find out where he's coming from here in a minute. I just did. He's coming over from the rival in the Utah Utes. All right, defensive back room. Let's talk about what they lose here now. Out of the cornerback room, probably will butcher this name as well, Michael Onyanwu. He is going to be gone out of that defensive back room. 41 tackles, 5 pass defended for him last season. And out of the safety room, I mean, you just lose 2 phenomenal players. 2 top 5 tacklers, and Anthony Switzer and Devin Dye are both gone through the transfer portal. 85 tackles for Switzer, a couple with 3 sacks, 4 pass defended, and a pick. And for Dye, 81 tackles, 7 pass defended, 2 interceptions for the defensive back last season. So your defensive back room, who does come back? Well, J.D. Drew and Avante Dickerson will be back in this cornerback room. Drew had 6 passes defended, a couple with 27 tackles last season. You also do get EJ Fisk and Mason Edwards in through the transfer portal. And in your safety room, well, you do still return a ton of really good talent, even though you lose probably your best 2 safeties from last year. You get one back in Ike Larson that, look, I definitely just misspoke a second ago. Switzer and Dye, look, very good safeties for the team last year. You could argue, though, that Ike Larson, and this is where I was meaning to go with this, you could argue that Ike Larson was the best safety on this team last season. 102 tackles, 6 passes defended, 4 interceptions. Again, another triple-digit tackler, big impact player, could be the leading tackler here for the Aggie defense in 2024. Simeon Harris, Jaden Francois, Omari Okeke, and Chase Davis all return, while Jordan Vincent's in from the portal, and we can't forget about our kickers because they're people too. Steven Castanley is back to do the punting duties, as well as Ryan Marks, and you do get Elliot Nimrod back to do the kicking duties here for this team in 2024. So overall, I take a look at this Aggie defensive side, and I do see it improving in some ways, but Nate Drilling, I think, is going to be a pretty good defensive coordinator for this team. And if Blake Anderson was still the head coach, I'd maybe have a little more confidence that this defense is going to improve more than I think they're going to here in 2024. But when I just take a look at this team, I mean, look, you got a lot of good defensive talent, getting Larson back, getting some of those defensive pieces in the front back like Sion Sloan, Blaine Spires, and Logan Peely are huge getbacks for this defense, and they got a lot of really good talent. They had that last year, and the scheming wasn't there. I think the scheming will be better for this version of the Aggie defense, but when Nate Drilling also asked a couple trying to fix this defense along with coaching a football team, I think definitely it's going to hold this defense back from improving as much as it could here in 2024. But that being said, I do see improvement for this defensive unit this upcoming season. Hey, let's talk about this schedule. Any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Aggies are going to win fairly easily. Any game in yellow will be a close competitive one, but I still see the Aggies being able to win, and any game in red is a loss. You won't start out with a loss here. You'll beat the Robert Morris Colonials, a chance to maybe play Petrus and Barnes, see what quarterback is going to give you the best shot to win, form chemistry with these wide receivers, get the defensive scheming there, and then boom, you hit the ground off and running because you have 2 former Pac-12 teams here on this schedule. You have to go on the road to play the USC Trojans, who are now members of the Big Ten Conference, and you get the home game against your in-state rival, Utah versus Utah State. Again, it's the Utah Utes, now part of the Big 12. And I got to be honest with you, Aggie fans out there, I know you probably think you have a pretty decent shot there to beat the Utah Utes, but that's a team personally that I really love, and I don't see you winning either of these games. Let's start with the game against the USC Trojans. You still have Miller Moss running things at the quarterback position, and if he's anything like we saw in his bowl game, well, USC's offense is going to be just fine. The wide receiver room is loaded, and you do bring in DeAnton Lynn over from UCLA, a guy who had the Bruins defense as one of the best in the nation last year, to try to fix that Trojan defense, and I do think they see improvement on that side of the ball. How much? We will have to wait and see. But Utah State, I don't think going to go on the road and win that one. USC is just more supremely talented compared to Utah State, and I think Utah is as well. Cam Rising is coming back for another season. Hey, if Bryson Barnes is going to get the start, he gets to play his former team, so maybe a little motivation there, but I think Utah's just going to be too good. Cam Rising's back. The running back room is still going to be good. He might have his best group of pass catchers that, Cam Rising has ever had as the quarterback of the Utah Utes. That couples with Brant Keithy, the tight end, coming back here to this program, and a ton of talent on defense, coupled with, well, we all know the defensive scheming that Kyle Whittingham likes to play. They'll punch you in the mouth before you even step on that football field, and the Utah Utes will be beating Utah State here in 2024. Okay, this was a really tough one for me because, look, there's a lot of solid talent here on this Utah State team. I think there are a couple things that are going to hold them back. One, Nate Drilling, not only being a new face to this program as a defensive coordinator, but now having to step into a role as a head coach in this sort of the scenario with Blake Anderson gone. You're stepping in July when you're trying to get the roster figured out and you're trying to figure out the depth chart. You have a pretty good idea of who is on your team. I don't think Temple is going to be good this season. The Owls do lose E.J. Warner through the transfer portal. A lot of other really good players are leaving. Now, there are a ton of transfers coming in on defense, and I do think that that's where Temple has the slight advantage here in this game. I mean, they have it at home. Again, I don't think the quarterback play for Utah State is going to impress a ton of people this season, and while I think both of those guys, and Barnes and Petrus, do improve from the way they've played in seasons prior here in 2024, guys, I just got Utah State being able to struggle through this one, and they get a road loss against the Temple Owls. No more of an explanation than I just kind of have a feeling that this is going to be a struggling season for the Utah State Aggies, and I do think they'll lose that road game to the Temple Owls before their first road game here or I should say before their first conference game after their first bye week, and you start out conference play with a couple of doozies. You're not going to be beating the Boise State Broncos. Ashton Genty and a ton of other weapons are back. Malachi Nelson is coming in to play quarterback here for that team. The Broncos defense is loaded with talent this season, and they're going to be one of, if not the best team in the group of 5 round. Boise State beats Utah State, and UNLV will do the same thing. Now, look, even though UNLV does lose some good talent off of last year's team, most notably in quarterback Jaden Maeva, look, you still get Matthew Sluka coming in. I think he's going to fit in really well with this offensive system. Ricky White is back. Some really good defensive players are back. They loaded up on defensive backs through the transfer portal. UNLV will be one of the better teams in the Mountain West Conference, and that is a win for the Rebels, which means it's a loss for the Aggies. So you start out this season 1-5. Now, you very well could be starting out the season 2-4, and I think no other way your season starts here. I do think Utah State has way more talent than what New Mexico has this season. You got a really good skill position room here with Utah State, some really good defensive pieces in each level. And New Mexico, even though this is a program that I feel like is starting to trend in that right direction, they're getting a couple pieces in. You lose a couple pieces through the transfer portal, but they got some good pieces there. They're going to be competitive, but I don't see them beating the Utah State Aggies, especially on the road. So Aggies get win number 2 of 2024 right there. But again, your next 2 games are going to be toughies. You got to go on the road to play Wyoming, and even though Craig Bowl is gone, and even though some really good pieces on offense are gone, I think the offense is going to be solid enough to keep them in games and kind of like what Wyoming did last year, be able to manage games, don't turn the football over, just play smart football, and the offense will do what it needs to do. The defense returns pretty much everybody from last season. It is still loaded, and I don't think the Aggies will be beating the Cowboys off defensive things alone, especially if, hey, I'm sitting here saying I don't really like anyone in this quarterback room a whole lot. Yeah, this Cowboys defense is going to take over, and the Aggies will go down on the road. Second bye week coming up right here before a game against the Washington State Cougars, which I also do have you losing. Look, Washington State and Jake Dickert's club got ramsacked through the transfer portal. Cam Ward is gone. A couple really good pieces at wide receiver are gone. Some phenomenal defensive players from a year ago are also gone. But Washington State still got a lot of really good talent on it. I like the Cougars here. Again, trying to find a home. They were left without one after the sort of almost near collapse of the Pac-12 conference. And you could argue it has collapsed already. But again, obviously the Pac-12 is still an entity. Washington State, I do think, is going to pick up the win against the Utah State Aggies. However, I do think Utah State's going to be able to win this game right here against the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, a team in 2024 that I think is going to be fairly competitive, but I don't have a lot of confidence in. Yes, they made a bowl game last year. I think they're going to regress from where they were last season, and that's a win to me for the Utah State Aggies. I do think Utah State's going to pick up at least one big win this year. And look, I think San Diego State is going to be a really good football team this season in the Mountain West Conference. You have some really talented pieces coming in through the transfer portal. I love Sean Lewis as a head coach, but when you move from a defensive-minded head coach to an offensive-minded head coach, you're going to get some stumbles, and I think this is one of them for the Aggies, or not for the Aggies, for the Aztecs. The Aggies beat the Aztecs there, but then lose the final game of the season against Colorado State as Jay Norvell's club is expected to make a jump in Mountain West play this season. I think that'll happen as well. Utah State goes 4-8 here in 2024. I'd be a lot more optimistic if Blake Anderson was still the head coach, and I know some seasons when he was the head coach haven't been great. I mean, you go back and take a look at last season, overall just wasn't great, but Blake Anderson, still a pretty solid head coach. He took you to a Mountain West title. I just think it's going to be really tough for him this year with Nate Drilling at the step in as both the defensive coordinator and new head coach. I mean, the things I think are going to be rocky for the Aggies this year. You could still make a bowl game. There are lots more winnable games on the schedule for the talent you have, but I think they'll fall short. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see you in my next video. It's the Eastern Michigan Eagles. Goodbye.